welcome Frankie Boyle!
Hello and welcome to New World Order. Tommy Robinson, the founder of the EDL, is in prison, but his supporters staged an impromptu protest in Trafalgar Square. It's believed that Tommy's working on his prison autobiography, My Struggle to Take 3 Cocks at Once. In Scotland, minimum alcohol pricing has kicked in, and deaths have actually gone up, as alcoholics trying to scrape together a few extra coins have started drowning in shopping centre water features. We had some votes on Brexit. There's still no solution proposed to the problem of the Northern Irish border. So the solutions are either you have a hard border, which is politically impossible, or the other solution is to track every object that crosses the Northern Ireland border. Now, to me, that sounds a bit ambitious in a part of the world where there are people who still don't know where their own kneecaps are. Donald Trump met Kim Jong-un. I think Kim looks like quite a laugh. It looks like Korean Peter Kay. Do you remember food? Who remembers food? Am I right? It's a pity they didn't bring their wives. They could have compared their escape plans. It's weird that someone like Trump has managed to pull that off because he's not brilliant at foreign policy. He angered the people of Haiti, and that's dangerous for Trump because you can make a voodoo doll of him just by rolling a donut around in a Labrador's basket. Scotland beat England at cricket. Yeah, and the people of Scotland celebrated by Googling, what is cricket? Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, was in London this week. He's got a comb over, Netanyahu. I always think his hair is like a kind of living metaphor, occupying territory where it doesn't really belong. Israel are saying that people on the Gaza Strip are attacking them with kites. Kites! I think the main problem of being an Israeli military spokesman must be keeping a straight face. These people have kites. If we don't stop them, they'll start farting into beach balls and bouncing them over the fence. Joining me tonight to discuss the week's big topics are Sara, Pascoe and Miles Jupp. Hello, Sara. Hello, Miles.
Hello.
Hello.
Congratulations on your victory in the cricket, Frankie.
I can't believe Scotland would be any good at a game where rain stops play.
Yeah. It turns out that when it doesn't rain, they're good at it. They just don't get the opportunity to test that theory very often.
I watched, after the summit between Kim Jong-un and Trump, the White House actually put out this film celebrating the meeting. So we've got a little clip of it here.
What if a people that share a common and rich heritage can find a common future? Their story is well known, but what will be their sequel? Destiny Pictures presents a story of opportunity, a new story, a new beginning, one of peace, 2 men, 2 leaders, 1 destiny. What if? The future remains to be written.
That to me is the ultimate in postmodernism. Donald Trump giving a statement about meaning that is meaningless in a trailer for a film that doesn't exist.
I think it's genius. I think that's the cleverest thing they could have done. He's obsessed with films, so that will have worked. And also, they showed it to him on an iPad, like, here's a gift that Donald Trump described as a cassette.
Tonally, it's like when you check into a hotel room and there's an advert that's playing on a loop on the television continually that you always instantly turn off.
Or something that they make on The Apprentice.
I want you to go out there, make a trailer that will solve years and years of disunity between North and South Korea. I want it to be profitable, but the main thing is I want an entire nation of people to no longer have to starve.
Whose idea was it to taunt China? OK, our first motion. Elites aren't all bad is one of the things you'll soon learn in a re-education camp. It increasingly feels like the country's becoming divided into two groups, those who own property and those who will one day rise up and kill them. It's 2018, and for all the talk about equality and diversity, the UK has all the social mobility of a Thomas Hardy novel. If you're born posh, you stay posh. You can go into as many branches of Greggs as you like. You'll never find anyone working there who used to be a Viscount but gave it up because they couldn't handle the pressure. And their upper classes behave appallingly because someone will always bail them out. So they live a life of risks, whether it be waiting for daddy to die before next term's fees are due, or hoping that what the Filipino nanny is screaming is that she enjoys BDSM. Joining us to discuss class war, please welcome Desiree, Burch and Romesh Ranganathan. Welcome aboard.
Great to be here. Learning about how we're going to worship the elites soon. I think they need to change their name. Like, the elites is already just like you want to kick someone in the dick.
I don't mind elites, man. I like them. I just sort of think it's nice to have an excuse to not achieve. You know, because you sort of, the system is built against you. If you were able to achieve whatever you wanted, then I have to blame my own lack of motivation for my failure, whereas now the system's against me. It's the fucking elites, mate. Do you know what I mean?
Well, you're lucky to have been born British, because in America, you are never going to move. There is no such thing as social mobility, but it's written into the American dream, and it's like everybody thinks that they're supposed to try to pull themselves up and do the entire thing, even though it is far more impossible to do there than in a host of other Western countries.
But you say that to me, and that, to me, sounds liberating. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you sort of go, I am never going to get out of this shithole.
But they don't know that. They think that they can,
that's
that it's their fault.
That's what I'm saying. We should be publicising the elites and making people more aware.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Agreed.
Your dreams mean nothing.
Britain's very class conscious. I mean, it's different in America, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are we all conscious of our class here? Miles, I think we know about you.
What's amazing to me is I saw this show last week. He was in a suit. Now, trying to disguise himself, he's gone all urban. Do you know what I mean? So solid, Jupp.
How many of So Solid Crew have you worked with, Romesh?
I haven't, because I mean...
One.
I
Fuck you. I'm from the streets, you are not welcome to play with us.
Do you do that thing where if you're talking to somebody who you consider to be working class, like a tradesman...
I can't see how this would happen. I honestly can't. Does your door not have a spy hole? No, sorry.
There's a thing, and I think only men do it, and I think that's a huge gender-sweeping generalisation, but I think only men do this, where they put on a more all right, mate voice in taxis.
Builders as well, and I think it's very, you know, because if you've got builders, you're going... I'm not going to go in going, all right, guys, all right, mate, hello, all right, because I'm thinking, you've just sent me the biggest fucking invoice I've seen in my life. I'm paying you thousands of pounds every week while I just wander around the house in my pants thinking, where the fuck's this money going to come from? If anything, I should go, guys, just stop working. I cannot afford to pay you. You've won whatever this battle is. You've broken me. It's not finished, but you have to leave. Mate, you know.
What class would you say you came from, Sara?
Well, I'm the best kind, because I was born to teenage parents in Dagenham, and they were both unqualified and very poor, but at the other side of that, They also both had parental support and big families. And I'm now middle class and new money.
I'm really happy to hear you say that you're middle class, just because whenever I speak to people in this country, everyone else but them is middle class and disgusting. And I was just like, oh, these middle class people. And I'm like, well, but you have things. Like, you bought me dinner and drinks, so that's why I'm listening to you.
So much of class is about hope and potential. Like, truly working class people, there wasn't social mobility. And I think that did improve for a time.
I was head of sixth form at like an outstanding like school, and but I moved from that school because I consider myself a hero of the people, and I fuck you, mate. I left that school to go and work at a comprehensive school that just come out of special measures. And I thought I was going to like put on a leather jacket, turn a chair around backwards and be like Michelle Pfeiffer and like turn it around. But the thing is, at the outstanding school, we used to do this evening where we tell them about university finance and how to apply and stuff like that. It was a wonderful evening. And then I tried to do that at the school that had come out of special measures, and it was 2 hours of me defending university education to people that just thought it was a massive waste of time. Parents just going, well, it's just going to work for me. So why are you telling us about this bullshit university thing? Why are we going to spend money for that? And it was just like the aspirations were the most difficult thing to sort of deal with. And that's correct, because your dreams mean shit.
Yeah.
All right?
I think it's not really about class, it's about sort of wealth and earning power. You know.
Well, it's sort of about class consciousness as well, isn't it? Like, growing up, my dad was quite class conscious. So, like, I remember being at school and they showed us some documentary about nuclear war, and I was about 8 or 9 or something, and I said to the teacher, oh, my dad said there's like a bunker somewhere where like powerful people would go and stay if there was like a nuclear war. And she was like, that's right, that's great, he talked to you about that. I was like, yeah, and he said that if he could find out where it was, he'd stand outside with a rifle and kill everybody.
Oh, God.
The rise in inequality seems unlikely to stop when those charged with dealing with it personify it and are often proudly out of touch. Watch how Boris Johnson reacts to being reminded of his days as part of the Billingdon Club in this embarrassing BBC interview.
It is a truly shameful vignette of almost superhuman undergraduate arrogance and toffishness and twittishness, I suppose. But, you know, it was great fun at the time. Or was it? Actually, the awful truth about all that business was you kind of felt very, you know, posh, and you felt it was wonderful to be going around swanking this up, but actually, I remember the dinners being incredibly, you know, drunken and you know...
ending up with smashing up restaurants.
Well, yes, and so the abiding feeling was of deep self-loathing and, you know, what.
I've talked to a number of the people in the photograph,
Oh, God, have you? All right.
And they say that when they see you these days, you go up to them and say, bulla, bulla, bulla.
Right. Do they?
Yes, they do.
It may be that I do.
I feel sorry for him. I'll tell you why. Because he did not experience self-loathing. I mean, that's bullshit. When you watch him talking there, he's embarrassed to fully embrace the fact that he enjoyed it. He bloody loved it. The only thing he regretted was not finishing himself off on the pig.
Okay, he's foreign secretary. Like, that haircut is white privilege, because seriously, like, there have been black news anchors who have been fired for wearing their hair like I wear my hair because it's, you know, disarming to white people. And he can just walk out to a foreign country like, you know, me do foreign policy good, and everyone's like, yay.
I love that as an analogy, that's white privilege hair, because it can go anywhere at once.
That's true.
That's so clever.
The gap in life expectancy in the UK between rich and poor is more than 8 years. One man's struggle with poverty and ill health drove him to gruesome extremes, as witnessed here by a stoic Ross Kemp.
When you've had 3 heart attacks, you say you've got cirrhosis of the liver,
Aye.
and you've
5 toes.
You've pulled your 5 toes off, yeah?
Aye.
What did you do with them?
Well, 2 of them were on top of the telly.
Sorry?
2 of them on top of the telly.
2 of them were on top of the telly.
Aye, that's a big toe, man. I think it's a wee toe.
Let's have a look.
That's my toe.
That's your toe?
That's my toe, aye.
Do you not think that was probably not a very good idea, really?
So had you got Ross Kemp in just to confirm they were toes?
He looked shocked, and he's been in Afghanistan. I really want to see that guy's episode of Queer Eye. Let's work with the tools you have.
Is that really exploitative, that programme? Is it, when they do programmes like that, where they go into somebody's house who is incredibly desperate, they make these kind of shows, and I don't know if they're useful.
I think there's two sides to that, though, Sarah, because there's that thing of, like, there's various shows. There was a show in Scotland around the same time, it's called The Scheme, and people said this is a poverty safari, and it was clearly, to some extent, exploitative. But at the same time, that's the only time you see those people in the mainstream media. Like, you'll never see those people otherwise. Anyway. Inequality is still a problem that traditional politics doesn't seem to want to solve. This has led some people to look for a more radical solution, as seen on the Daily Politics in this surreal coverage of a protest march.
In the end, it didn't take long to clear them. But elsewhere, there were small pockets of violence, and 3 police officers were injured, needing hospital treatment. At least 50 arrests were made, mainly for public order offences. And some of the protesters were disappointed with how it turned out.
Oh, it's not really a march, is it? It's just people standing around in the corner.
I think they're scattered around and they haven't got together, because if they did get together, then it would have been a revolution, probably. But I think the weather's put everyone off, to be honest.
I think the weather forecast should have a little bit, you know, revolutionary conditions.
Yeah, yeah.
A bit chilly tonight, you might want to set fire to a few cop cars.
Revolutionary poets like Gil Scott Heron out there, like, the revolution will not be canopied. There will be no free golf umbrellas or smoking shelters.
So, in conclusion, who knows what direction Britain will go in? Without a revolution, perhaps our next Prime Minister will be Jacob Rees-Mogg, if he's not captured and returned to Westworld Victorian Britain. Maybe it doesn't matter, because maybe people don't matter very much. There are more bacteria in your body than human cells, and maybe it is these bacteria that actually pilot us like life ships, making us single-minded in our desire to survive and spread endlessly like viruses. Holidays in Magaluf are like think tanks for these bacteria to meet and swap ideas. Love Island is chlamydia's Bilderberg. Perhaps the... Perhaps the whole of human history has been shaped by bacteria for its own ends, leading us to this point where bacteria can finally travel to a new planet under Elon Musk's foreskin. Next up, the final weeks of life on Earth will seem like 1,000 years. There is some good news about climate change. Apple is now run completely on green energy, especially when you consider that child labourers are biodegradable. Developing nations say that rich Western countries aren't doing enough to help them deal with the effects of climate change. But that's not the case. We're going to help them deal with drought by submerging them under the ocean. As the temperature increases, some people say it will be like boiling a frog. But surely in that analogy, the frog doesn't know that the temperature is rising. Humanity is fully aware, but possibly just too depressed to do anything. It's more like boiling a recently divorced 45-year-old man. Sara, Romesh, you're both vegan. That's supposed to be the best thing that you can do for the planet, isn't it?
It is supposed to be the best thing you can do for the planet. And it's not just that I'm a vegan. In the last decade that I've been a vegan, I've had 8 boyfriends. Oh, how so many? Overlapping. And, and all of them are now vegans. One of the things I get online is men asking, oh, you're a vegan, so do you drink cum? Do you get
Why don't you reply to your emails, Sarah?
Do people ask you that?
Do people ask me if you drink cum?
She sort of hovers above it and dips into it like a hummingbird.
Oh, my God. You must say if any of this isn't true, Sarah.
Yeah. Are you worried about the climate apocalypse?
I am on the one hand. It's not nice to think of it all ending, but so too will sort of Andrew Neil's broadcasting output and stuff like that. So there's a kind of swings and roundabouts feel to it all.
What about you, Desiree? Does it worry you?
Obviously. It will be terrible to live through the Earth becoming more and more sort of scorching and there being more and more of a fight over resources. But, you know, I'm I'm just now starting to get out of debt, so I don't have a retirement plan. Like, if things get bad, I'll just go get hit by a 187 bus.
Your plan is to commit suicide?
If things get bad, yes, of course. I don't want to be here at the very end.
My fear about that plan, because I thought about that, with my luck, I'd kill myself and then the government would go, no, we fixed it.
We just needed to be one person like
Yeah. We did one fat Sri Lankan go for this happened.
Every 2 seconds, we lose an area of rainforest the size of a football pitch. This is a huge problem, unless, like me, you love football. Take a look at these startling reactions to deforestation in this arresting documentary footage.
Deep in the woods of North Carolina, an extremist eco-group called Earth First bewails the violation of American nature.
I want to mourn the loss of all the old growth, that there are some people here who do care. So I want you to know that, trees, that we care.
I've looked at clear cuts and burnt forest, and I've felt outraged, but I didn't scream and I didn't cry. And I need to.
If you love trees so much, and you're sad that some of them are gone, why are you going to the ones that remain and being a massive prick around them? Do you know what I mean? I just don't understand what's going on. Do you know what I mean?
Also, white man playing an ethnic drum, always very awkward.
Oh, always the worst. Trees are actually way better than people because they work in networks and they take care of their sick and they're old and they're dying to make sure for the good of the group.
You have watched too much Lord of the Rings.
There's a theory that it's basically like the internet, but with plants, in terms of how deep the roots go in all the channels and how they communicate together, and they know who needs what.
That sort of thing, I've read about this, and it just feels like torture, because apparently they can communicate with each other, but they can't actually really action a lot of stuff because they're trees.
Anyway, 8 million metric tons of plastic end up in our oceans each year. An effective way to cut down on waste is to find creative new ways to recycle, as shown in this uncomfortably close-up home video.
You know, a lot of people throw these away, but a better idea is to take 2 standard-sized water bottles, mine are 1 liter apiece, and you make a pair of shoes. First thing you do, you have to squish it down, get it to the size. Tie, and there you have it. Bye, everyone.
Basically uninvented the shoe. Yeah. I mean, even if you're just recycling, you could have reused them as bottles.
Yeah. But then when it pans up, she doesn't look as absolutely bonkers as you might imagine.
No,
Or
I expected the camera to pan up. She's got her own shit all over her face.
And also, what happens with your existing shoes? Like, aren't they now...
You can use them for bottles.
Drinking.
You can fill them with tap water and put them in the fridge. They can build a dossier of evidence when they come to section you.
You'll try to sneak past them, but they'll hear you. Plastic has a devastating effect on wildlife, as seen in this upsetting seagull autopsy from a hard-hitting film by the UN.
Yeah, the stomach is very, very full, and if we look here, there's some very dark pieces.
Oh, look at that.
Absolutely no doubt that this bird died as a result of that plastic. That is literally a gut full of plastic.
Jen, I counted 234 pieces of plastic out of that one bird. Is that a record?
Not even close, unfortunately.
I'd like to just stand on a beach throwing away little tiny, perfect plastic replicas of that seagull scientist lady in the hope that one day I'd really freak her out.
It is sad. But what I would say is, you know when they show these things with the seagulls full of plastic and then there's this video where, like, they go out to the ocean and then there's this big sort of island full of plastic and they go, isn't this sad, isn't this sad? I didn't know that it was all getting dumped out there. Do you know what I mean? I followed the instructions. It had the little picture of the guy go into the bin, and I put it in the bin. Now, why am I being made to feel like a prick, mate? You told me to do it. It's not my fault. You went and put it in the ocean. I never knew you were doing that. It's not my fault. And also, it's not that sad, because seagulls are pricks. Do you know what I mean?
Well, seeing as we've got plastic to get rid of, we could breed lots of seagulls to kind of essentially be a Hoover that commits suicide when it's full.
It's not the worst idea.
Close, though. There is a fair amount of disagreement among experts. Some believe the Earth is doomed, although there are many others who believe it is fucked. One or two, like author Joe Quirk, think everything is going to be OK thanks to this outlandish animated vision of the future.
Long before humanity colonizes Mars, our children will live in floating nations on the sea. The first to seek jobs on ocean farms will be the poorest billion on Earth. They will come to the blue frontier because floating societies will require refugees to survive economically. Mobile land will empower individuals to exit poorly governed societies and choose better ones. Each floating homestead will be a nano-nation, a seastead.
I think that what that goes to show is you can still do it when you're off your tits.
There are a few flaws in it, aren't there? I mean, for example, refugees, from what we know, aren't great sailors. I mean, are we really going to have less war if there are 10,000 countries all living on seaweed?
It will get very competitive, won't it? The idea that sort of countries can move around. You'll have a situation like where we're chasing Belgium around the Atlantic like wacky races or something like that.
If it's functional, I can see it working in a lot of different places.
We could divide up the entire world according to sort of people's interests and stuff, and it will stop being about nationality and it will stop being about class. It will be about what people actually like, and you could sort of end those kind of divisions by basically having, you know, one sort of thing which is just for people that really like Laser Quest. So then they'll deal with each other. And it would be a completely different world, and I'm actually very optimistic about the future, and that's not how I imagine this evening would finish.
But you have to have, like, days where you open the gates and let them come on shore to, like, breed, because you just can't have a bunch of people who are into Laser Quest having babies on one island, because it's going to be one big, like, mega nerd at the end.
They're all male virgins.
I mean, that's kind of utopian on your part, Miles. I think they'll all be ruled by a different pirate with a different sexual proclivity.
Well, that's the logical conclusion to almost everything. Yeah.
So, in conclusion, this week, Richard Branson has been tweeting about the environment. I would say, how can he keep a straight face? But his face has never been straight. He looks like someone cast a baboon in a movie about the life of Rolf Harris. Maybe it's time we started looking at being pro-business and pro-environment as opposites. Perhaps we're all annoyed at climate change deniers because they're still at the denial stage of grief, while we've moved on to bargaining. Even our fictional dystopias may turn out to be fantasies. We imagine the Earth will gradually sink into chaos, but non-linear theories of global warming mean it might just be one afternoon of people screaming, then suddenly you disappear under a boiling 100-mile-high wave of sewage flecked with famous landmarks from across the world. Your mind finally silenced by the sudden arrival in the space previously occupied by your forehead of a shit-coloured Taj Mahal. I dropped in to see my friend the other day, and her 4-year-old daughter opened with the words, "The world is dying," in a very sad voice. I said something soothing. I wish I could remember what it was now. Soon she'll learn that it's not really the sort of thing that we find it polite to talk about. That's a great note to end on. Thanks to my guests, Sara, Pascoe, Miles, Jupp, Desiree, Burch and Romesh, Ranganathan!